Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Mind Your Nest. I'm your host, Jennifer Rosen, and I'm in a different, very cool studio today. I know it's been a while. You're probably wondering, where'd she go? A couple of weeks ago, Janine and I were talking, and we decided at her suggestion that we were going to shift our focus on my podcast. Now, I've loved every episode. I've loved and adored every single guest that I've had on. However, I wanted to take a step back and reflect over the past 39 episodes, which even saying that is, wow, I did all that. And I thought, you know what? Let's focus on more about my business, what I do, what an actual client meeting looks like. There is no such thing as a regular visit, or it's not a cookie cutter. I do the same thing every time, every week when I see my clients, or I don't do the same thing with each client. And I loved that idea. Now, Janine, as you obviously know, was really the impetus behind me starting a podcast. And she's really helped me to really expand my mindset about the purpose of a podcast and who our target audience is. I've talked a lot about the very wide range in terms of my client demographics. So I don't really speak to one decade more versus another, because everybody could benefit from my services. So after these 39 episodes, and with Janine's help and our conversations, and with her deep knowledge on continuing to provide value when I sit behind this microphone, I thought, what a great idea. So for those of you that have listened to my podcast or have followed me, you might have picked up that my most recent episode really talked about what I do as a daily money manager. I went into a little bit more detail about where the name came from and gave you background about my professional experience and, a lot of history about what helped bring me to where I am today. So I'm not going to bore you, and I don't believe repetition is a great thing when you're behind a microphone. Although, obviously, I'm human, so I'm sure I'm going to repeat a story or two. So you'll have to give me a little latitude in that regard. So I thought that for this first step in shifting the focus on really Mind Your Nest, that I would give you a couple of different client examples. I've had some recent clients that have returned from back up north, and my experience with really like re-engaging with them after not seeing them for a few months, and really how it was just like riding a bike. Didn't have to reintroduce myself, walked in the door, gave them hugs, sat down, and just got down to business. I also really wanted to talk about a client of mine who I've been seeing probably for about 4 months, and I might have mentioned her before, but she is suffering from a terminal pulmonary disease, and she's on oxygen 24 hours a day, cannot go outside. She's severely compromised, and she is an extraordinary human being. She's from France. She has a French name, which I'm not going to disclose because I'm very big into confidentiality and respecting everybody's privacy. But she is so interesting. She moved here from France, I think decades ago. And I love talking with her because her voice and her accents and her affect is just beautiful. I've always loved the French language. I remember my daughter took it in school, and most people that I knew took the Spanish route, which I only know a few sayings, but the most necessary sayings like "De está el baño, por favor," which is obviously "Where's the restroom?" But When Rachel started speaking in French, there's just something beautiful about that language. Now, I don't know what the heck they're saying, but I could listen to somebody speaking French all day long. So my client, she has this, shall I say, je, and when I'm sitting and talking with her and we're working, you can't help but be relaxed and at ease. And there's something, I don't know, it's like there's this peace and serenity when I'm at her house. Now, she knows she's dying. The main focus of my work with her is really to make sure that she is as prepared as possible with all of her financial matters, as well as making sure that her husband, who has severe cognitive decline, is taken care of to the best of her ability. And what they say sometimes, like, I learn a lot when I'm with somebody. I just take it all in and absorb their history, their trials and tribulations, and especially with this client, really the event that got her to where she is today. But I also know, and I don't mean this to sound vain, but this is from our conversations, I know that I have had an effect on her. And that's one of the things that I really wanted to talk about today, as I've talked about how important relationships are and building those relationships, whether they're personal or professional. A lot of us want to do business with people that we trust, that we respect, that we feel comfortable with, and people that make us feel like we're the only client. And I know that I was born with that just because of my parents and my brothers and whatnot. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I was going to be one of those people that was going to be like that or have that demeanor. It's like a fine wine, it ages over time. I have to say that while this client has told me she has learned so much about not only herself, but me and humanity, but I have learned an incredible amount about people that are facing the end and really how strong they are. Now, not everybody is like that, right? Some people, when they're facing the end, go kicking and screaming. So when I go and see her, again, we're there for 2 hours and it's very focused. She's very organized about what needs to be done, whether it's outstanding balances for medical services, whether it's setting up automatic payments for some of her accounts, whether it's helping to create a login for her husband, who's a veteran, and being able to access they have a food program. We're very focused on what tasks need to be done. Something else that I have done and continue to do for her, which, as I said, there's a list of a lot of the tasks and responsibilities that a daily money manager does on a regular basis. Of course, there are always those one-offs and etc. or additional services. And one of those services is I've gone to the post office for her numerous times. She has family in France. She likes to send birthday cards. She has certain bills that she doesn't want to set up on automatic payment. So she writes a check and I go to the post office and make sure everything is sent out either certified mail or overnight with the tracking. And I would do that every day if that's something that she really needed, because she doesn't leave the house. She can't, or else she'll be in trouble. So that's something that I do for her. And I just say yes to whatever she needs, because what would be the benefit to me or her if I said no? I don't like saying no as much as possible. And what I learned many years ago is instead of saying no, I can't do that, or no, that's not something I do, or as most of you I'm sure have heard throughout your professional journeys, no, that's not my job. I've never felt comfortable hearing people say that, because if you're in the service industry, no should never be part of your vocabulary. in terms of making sure you're providing the best service possible for your clients, which is the goal of being in the service industry. That's how I believe. You, of course, might have a different opinion. So if I don't know the answer, and if that's not something that I am comfortable doing, then my answer is that's either I'm not comfortable doing that, I'm not sure how to do that. My answer is always that's not something that I know about, but I will find the answer for you, or I will find the person that can help you. And even saying that, it's not a disappointment to this client. It's letting her know that my main focus when I'm there is her and what she needs and what she really demands at this point in time as she's getting close to the end. I learned many years ago when I worked for ADP, they actually had the best employee training that I'd ever experienced. And that's where I really learned how to be resourceful. And instead of saying no and flinching like you're robotic, let me find the answer for you. And I think that's what really helps me with my relationships with my clients because I don't hide anything. I'm very open and honest about what I can and what I'm not able to do. So when I went to see her last week, we were talking and she was showing me pictures. She used to be an artist. We were going through her iPad. Beautiful. I mean, like beautiful colors, very European. And she's surrounded by beauty in her home with various pieces of art. And she's surrounded by beauty of paintings that she used to paint many years ago. And she has this bag that she keeps a lot of her papers in where it's like our working inbox when I get there. It's a really cool book bag that she got from Barnes & Noble many years ago. And I believe it's called recycled straws maybe, or like paper mache. It's like a crisscross texture. And it's just great. It's not too big. It's not too small. It's like Goldilocks. And I said, that is a really cool bag. It's so colorful. She's like, I'm going to leave that to you. I'm like, really? Towards the end of our appointment, she said, is there anything else that you'd like? I said, what do you mean? There are a couple things that I was thinking about that I would leave for you. And I just wanted to ask if there was anything that caught your eye in my home. And I couldn't believe that. It was so incredibly touching and so personal. So after I left and I went to the post office, I had to mail a couple things for her. And I went home. I enjoyed the weekends, spent time with friends. That is really telling. And when when your relationship with your client gets to a certain point where your client doesn't need to say they trust you, doesn't need to say that they believe in the work that you do, doesn't need to really, even though she does, say thank you. But that gesture in and of itself, I wish I could think of the word that means more than special, but it was really special. And I hope that she continues to be here on the planet for as long as possible. Let me talk about another client, cutest client. I just adore them. They are cute. They've been married for a very long time, live out in Palm Beach, and they were up north for the summer. So they came back down. I went to see them, I think, 2 weeks ago. And one of the things with being a daily money manager is sometimes you have an idea of what you want to get accomplished before you walk into the house, depending on what time of the month it is. I've spoken a lot about people want to pay bills on the 1st or the 15th of the month, or the 15th and the last day of the month, or some variation of that sequence, depending on when their bills are due. Hadn't seen them in a few months, had an idea of what kind of work we needed to accomplish. and walked in the door, was so happy to see them, hugs all around. They're big tennis fans, and it was just after the US Open, so we talked about that and then got right to work. So I'm in their office with them, and what they were struggling with the most was their Xfinity bill. Now, they were up north with their family, and they were having trouble with paying their Xfinity bill. They had an experience of one credit card being compromised, having to cancel and then get a new credit card. And on the flip side, they couldn't remember their username and password. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are nodding your head. I can't tell you how many times I've clicked on the reset password. Sometimes I use my laptop. Sometimes I'll use my iPad if I'm out and about. It's a lot lighter, so I like carrying that. Most of the time, I'll log in from either one of those devices because the screen is bigger. And I found that I'm really not a big fan of using my cell phone for a lot of this stuff because I have glasses and I have progressives, and it's just getting, let's just say, it strains my eyes a bit more. So you can imagine what my clients, being up north, they both have their phones, and one of them, I'm sure, had an iPad, and one of their kids or grandkids had a laptop. However, I'm not sure if they brought their paper list of username and passwords. And I believe I've talked about this client before, that they really like paper and pencil or paper and pen, which I have great respect for. And they couldn't figure it out. What happens after you try usually more than 5 times to access your account? A lot of times you get locked out. And I think that experience was more frustrating to them than they wanted to probably admit. And I think they just said, we know we're seeing Jennifer, so we're just going to wait until we see her next week. So we spent the entire time working on Xfinity. We went onto their computer. I found numerous logins. We deleted those numerous logins, and they each had different passwords. Then I went onto their phones, did the same thing. Then we created a new password, which obviously I saved on their computer, and then I updated it on their phones, and then updated it in their contacts on their phone, and then updated it on their paper list of passwords. Now, some of you might say, that seems like a lot, or how is that even possible? One of the things that I talked to you about before was certain demographics still like using paper. Sometimes they trust it more than the computer or their phone. So for these clients, that's how they have always done it. So I wasn't about to change their process for updating crucial information to make sure that their Xfinity bill was being paid. And you say, how could you have spent your whole visit doing that? It takes time. These technological frustrations, password resets, not remembering which email you used, believing that you remember the password, so you're trying to do that. That takes a while. And as we age, our mental acuity is not as sharp as it once was. So imagine for a minute, close your eyes. You're ready to pay some bills. You're at your desk. You have your list of bills. Okay, let's just pretend that you're just starting out, setting a couple of your bill payments on automatic payment on the computer. And I imagine, or I guess, that some of you would be surprised at sometimes how long this could take, especially if you use multiple devices. Because if you're me, you forget to put the sync button on so that all of your devices sync up together. So if you don't do that, as I'm sure some of you would nod your head and say, she's right. If I don't have my sync button on, then I have to manually enter in Xfinity, the username and password, on all 3 devices. And I don't care how fast of a typer you are. I credit myself. I was always a fast typer in school when we had to take typing. It still takes time. And that's what we did that day. But you know what? We checked off a really big thing off their list. And fortunately, they didn't have anything critical that needed to be taken care of during that visit. However, if they did, then I would have taken care of it. And then I would have taken care of making sure that they could log into their Xfinity account and make sure their auto payment processed so that the cable and the internet and everything else didn't shut off. And for a lot of us, when the Wi-Fi goes out after a storm, we're like, oh my God, my Wi-Fi. It's almost like the world has stopped for us, right? Which is why I encourage people to keep paper references for everything, because more often than not, you're going to need that information when the lights do go off. So I always say a digital copy is great, but a digital and paper copy is the best. And especially in today's world, I think that more often than not, this impacts the younger generation, like my kids, in a much more severe way. When the electricity goes off and I can't turn on my TV or my phone or whatever, you know what? Thank God for my books. So I can always entertain myself if the lights go off. So in closing, I provide a plethora of services in addition to helping you keep your house in order, opening and sorting mail, paying bills, various miscellaneous tasks like going to the post office, picking up books at the library, and anything else that my client is in desperate need of assistance due to not being able to drive or due to lack of mobility. It's just an add-on that I know means more to them than anything else in the world, and I'm happy to do it. I also want to say one more thing about one of my original favorite clients. I know I've shared stories about her before. 97 years old, absolutely adore her. And she has been back up north for many months. And right before she went back up north, there was a tremendous tragedy in her family. Her great-granddaughter was killed in a car accident. She was 8 years old. And I remember thinking, I wonder if she's going to come back to Florida. And when I got an email from her son last week that said she's coming back in November, I can't tell you how excited I was to hear that news. She means an incredible amount to me. I've learned so much about attitude and aging and tragedy and the ability to keep moving on from her. And I'm just so excited to see her again. The bottom line is that feeling of looking forward to, that feeling of being able to reconnect with her and my other clients is what makes my job the most fulfilling of all. I love what I do. That's it. That's a wrap, as they say. Moving forward, we're going to talk about, as I said, more client-focused situations moving forward. I'm going to mix it up a little bit, but really focusing on my business, my services, and really my desire to help anyone that needs help. I hope you all have a great day. Enjoy the sun, and don't forget to mind your nest.